I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. It is 4:03 p.m. This is a special called tax hearing of the Oldham County Board of Education. We're at the Arvin Education Center in LaGrange, Kentucky. Today is August 28th, 2023. Sir?
Yes, just recommend the agenda be approved as presented.
Any changes to the agenda?
No, ma'am.
Okay, can I have a motion to approve the agenda made by Mrs. Sheffer, seconded by Mr. Dodson? All those in favor? And that's 4-0.
Yes, ma'am. I'd like to invite Dr. Shelton to come forward and share with you a review of FY24 tax information.
Welcome, Dr. Shelton.
Thank you and good evening. So, as you know, sorry, let me get the right screen up here. We received our tax rates on the night of our last regular board meeting. I got home and checked my email as I normally do before I go to bed, and there they were. So every year, the Department of Education, after certification through the Department of Revenue, sends tax rates out to the school district for consideration. And you have 45 days in which to consider the tax rates and to levy those rates. And this year, the rates that we have to choose from include the compensating rate, which is the rate that generates the same amount of revenue as the prior year. The 4% rate, which causes a lot of confusion based on its name, because people think it means you're increasing the rates by 4%, and that's not what it means. It means it's the rate that would generate 4% additional revenue compared to the previous year. And the subsection 1 rate, which is generally the highest rate you can set without being subject to recall. Our 4% rate and our subsection 1 rate are only 1/10 of a cent difference, but both of those rates exceed our current tax rates. And so, and through the review of the materials and of the assessment, we are recommending tonight for you to keep the current rates. That would be the rate of 81.2 for real and tangible personal property. That is allocated across the general fund at 58.4 cents and 22.8 cents for the building fund. In addition to those rates, the board also adopts tax rates for motor vehicles and utilities. The motor vehicle tax is currently 64.3 cents per $100 in assessed value, and we also recommend that rate to you, which is the maximum rate allowed, and 3% for utilities. As I mentioned, after we've analyzed these rates and the anticipated increases we have in our budgeted expenditures, adopting these rates will allow us to maintain our budget and meet all of our expenses. And after we consider the impact of the rates on the new assessment, and then with the adjustments in state funding, it will generate a net gain to the general fund of approximately $206,000. The total amount of new revenue that comes into the district is just over $5.4 million, and that is broken down to cover the cost of the raise and fringe benefits that the board previously passed. About $1.4 million of that goes into the building fund, and the remainder is spread to transportation and maintenance and to instructional programs across the district. So are you happy to answer any questions for you at this time? And then we'll be able to listen to any comments that anyone has. Is there any questions from the board?
Board members, any questions?
I hope I've been able to answer all your questions you've had so far.
I think you did great.
Okay.
I really appreciate all that the last few weeks.
Yeah.
Oh, I did want to make sure I stated also that we did advertise this hearing as is required by law in the Oldham era on the 17th and the 24th, and a copy of the ad is attached to your agenda.
Thank you, Dr. Shelton. Board members, any other questions? Sir?
Dr. Shelton, if you could you just touch on briefly the last paragraph there of the enclosure about what the holding the rate flat, the revenues that generates, but then what we actually net as a district? Can you just briefly touch on that just for a moment, please?
Certainly. So, part of the calculation of the allowable rates is based on the change that happens in our property assessment annually. In Oldham County, just as in every other county of the state, the PVA sets the valuations of all property within the county, certifies that, sends it to the Department of Revenue in Frankfort, and the Department of Revenue, after they've certified and reviewed it, sends it on to the Department of Ed. And with our total increase in assessment, just about $600 million, so that seems like a lot of money in assessment, but our assessment was $8.4 billion. It's now $9.1 billion. The total new revenue that would be generated is $5.4 million. Now, $1.4 million of that, as I mentioned, goes directly into the building fund, and that leaves just under $4 million that would normally go into the general fund. However, as we've talked and discussed in the district, because of the increase in the amount of money that is called local effort under the SEEK formula, which is a required contribution to receive state funding, it's 30 cents times the amount of your property valuation, and what's called Tier 1, which is an equalized portion of SEEK that's 15% above the base. That means that our local effort is $2.8 million. So in other words, what happens is, although we're increasing local funding, state funding drops. Because SEEK is actually an equalized formula between local and state money. So, as I said, just under $4 million to the general fund, almost $2.9 million is generated here locally, so that drops us down to $1.1 million. And then, as we've discussed previously, all districts now are going back to their normal counts for enrollment in ADA, which is, of course, ADA is what the state funds us based on. And we had been held harmless through the pandemic at the 2018-2019 ADA, and now we went back, and this year we're being funded on the 22-23 year-ending ADA. So with the drop in ADA, we have a $1.1 million reduction in SEEK funding. So effectively, between the additional local effort in Tier 1 and the ADA and enrollment loss, we would have netted to zero. But because the state SEEK base actually went up by $100 a student, we're going to see about a $200,000 net increase. So although it looks like we're getting a lot of new money at $5.4 million, the majority of that's generated locally, and the net of that is only $200,000 of additional revenue.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I think we clarified this at the last meeting, I believe, but just so anyone that wasn't there can hear that, if we did increase the tax rate, we can do whatever we want with that money, correct? So if we wanted to just use it for teachers or whatever we decided to do with that, we could do that. Is that correct?
Yeah, the board could raise the rate up to the what's called the 4% rate. That would be an additional 0.4 of 1 cent.
Right.
It would go, instead of 81.2, it would go to 81.6. It would generate an additional $329,000 of new revenue. And yes, the board then, since the building fund monies have already been set aside, could use those funds for whatever is decided. Yes.
Is that including the amount of SEEK they take from us for doing that?
Yes. It's already netted out because once the new assessment is set, they can do 30 cents times that and calculate the tier one at 15% above that, and it doesn't change no matter what tax rate you set.
And just to confirm, for every 1% salary increase, it costs about 800,000?
Correct.
Okay,
Up for the general fund.
right.
yes.
Okay.
Thanks, Dr. Shelton.
Thank you.
Public expression is next. Did we have a sign up outside?
Lori, do we have anyone signed up to speak? Can you check?
Mr. Dodson, did you want to go ahead and read the public expression policy for us, please?
I'll have to bring it up. Sorry. And it's not in this one.
Here,
Do-
I have it.
Do you want to read it, Carly?
No, I don't want to read it, but but I can pull it up for him. Switch up.
The public news media are permitted to attend all open meetings of the board. No person may be required to give identification in order to attend such meeting. The exception is the chairperson may impose conditions upon attendance at a given meeting only if such conditions are required for the maintenance of order. The board as a whole shall have the final discussion to the appropriateness of all rulings. During the public comment period, each regular meeting shall include a public comment period of at least 15 minutes. Any board rules and policies regarding conduct during school board meetings shall apply during the public comment period. Individuals or groups should contact the office of the superintendent prior to the next scheduled meeting in order to be considered for inclusion in on the agenda. Persons wishing to address the board must first be recognized by the chairpersons. Persons who wish to address the board, I gotta scroll this thing down. I got it. Recognition from the chairperson at the presentation item. The speakers may require the name and address of the chairperson may require the name and address of the speaker. The chairperson may rule on the relevance of the topic to the board's agenda. The chairperson may also establish time limits for speakers as may be required to maintain order and to ensure the expedient conduct of the board's business. The board as a whole shall have the final decision to the appropriateness of all rulings. No non-agenda issues, the board will not take official action on non-agenda issues introduced by the public in the meeting at which they are first introduced.
Thank you, Mr. Dodson. We have two speakers. Do you all have a time you'd like to recommend?
3 minutes.
5?
What'd you
What
ask?
do we
I'm
have?
sorry.
How much time?
We have
How many
two speakers?
Two speakers,
speakers.
I just let them,
Yeah,
five
I think
minutes, and
5
then, and then a
minutes,
wrap
yeah,
up. I'm
that's
not gonna,
fine.
let's not cut them off.
I don't think we,
Okay, 5 minutes is the time limit. Albert Harrison, you're first, sir, if you'd like to come up to the podium.
Good afternoon. I'm Albert Harrison, 114 McMakin Manor in LaGrange. It's interesting because you can't read any of your names from out here because of reflection off the lights. So if you want to remain synonymous, you're doing it. I think on the taxes, we're starting later in the process, and what we should do, we need to be starting at the PVA office where the assessments originate. I've spent a lot of time in the last 15 months going over different subdivisions, different developments, trying to find if there is a pattern, what the pattern is, and I've not found one. And that's looking in detail at over 30 different subdivisions in all parts of the county. Some of them have the same basic house footprint, totally different assessments. There's no reason for it. There's some developments that have not had an assessment increase in the last 7 to 8 years. It's supposed to be every 4 years, I think is what they shoot for. Some developments have had 3 assessments in the last 4 years, assessment increases, huge ones, as high as 62.5%. These are the low-income houses. The higher-end houses have lesser increases and fewer increases. The whole system is based on equity. It is a great system if it is managed correctly and done correctly. Because some people are paying way more than probably they should. Other people are not paying nearly what they should be paying. That's not equity. It should be consistent across the board. I thought I might discover a percentage of increase that was being used. No, there is none. You can't do it. And I would love to sit down with somebody on the board and look at the results of what I've come up with. I have met with a person from the Revenue Cabinet. He agrees with my findings and says he's coming back, but I haven't seen him. But people don't understand that is where their pocketbook gets hurt first. You get blamed for your taxes being so high, but your tax rate is based on what PVA comes up with. And if PVA is out of line, everything else is also. So I strongly suggest and recommend that somebody really take a good look at that between now and next year. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Linda Stasiowski?
Hi, I'm Linda Stasiowski, and actually I meant to write that for the 4:30 meeting, but I figured I would take this opportunity to announce that it's really difficult to get here at 4 o'clock, and I think it's really unfair and evident that this is an impossible time to have this very important meeting. And if we could reconsider that for future, especially something that affects not only our county, but, I mean, kids in our schools, but everybody that's here. And also, it's really hard to hear. The mic isn't situated correctly or something. It's difficult to hear right there. Thank you. Yes.
Okay. Okay, that concludes public.
Might want to see if he wants to speak.
Did you want to speak, sir? Did you want to speak, sir? Okay,
Oh, her.
yes. Please.
I think
Can I get your name, please?
my name is Elaine Carroll.
Thank you.
I believe that a tax increase at this time is a difficult proposition for many people in the community. There are people that are struggling because they're trying to decide whether they want to pay the bills for food and pharmaceuticals as opposed to their taxes and everything else that they need. And people who are retired, they're on a fixed income. Raising taxes only puts an additional burden on those people in our community. I think that you should reconsider and not put this burden at this time with such high inflation and the rates that are going up on everything that we purchase for our necessities at this time. That's what I have to say.
Sorry, we should have made it more clear. The recommendation is to keep the tax flat. It is not to raise it, is the recommendation that's being made to us by Dr. Shelton. Sorry. We should have made that more clear.
Okay. I thought what I read was to raise it. No. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay. Anyone else?
I think also make the comment about people can speak at the regular school.
Oh, yes. We are not taking action until the regular board meeting, so that if somebody didn't have a chance to come at 4 o'clock today, they would have a chance to speak this evening. So that's when we'll actually be taking action on the recommendation. I just want to make that clear as well. But the recommendation is to keep the tax flat and not to raise it, is what's being recommended to the board tonight. Anything else, sir?
No, just recommend to adjourn when we're ready.
Okay. Recommendation to adjourn made by Mrs. Sheffer, seconded by Mrs. Clem. All those in favor? And that's 5-0. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Today is August 28th, 2023. This is the regular August board meeting for the Oldham County Board of Education. We are at the Arvin Education Center in LaGrange, Kentucky. Sir, the agenda.
Yes, ma'am.
There are some amendments you would like to make.
Yes, ma'am. I'd like to first remove Superintendent Report number 1 from the agenda.
Okay,
Number 2, I have a few others. I'd like to also remove action item 14B from the agenda for this evening.
okay,
And the board has in front of them 3 supplements for the agenda. First is, you'll see a hard copy that we'll add later to the board packet as a supplement of the work that's happened within the finance department since January. Second is a supplement to action item 14D, and that is in regards to the Oldham County High School gym and the repairs that we need to continue to make there for the board to approve. And then the last item is to just amend the language for going into executive session.
got it, okay. Board members, any questions? Okay, can I have a recommendation to approve with the changes? Made by Mrs. Clem, seconded by Mrs. Sheffer. All those in favor? All those opposed? And that's 4-1.
I'm opposing because of pulling the policies.
Noted, Mr. Dodson. Thank you. Okay. Next, we have the Pledge of Allegiance. Mrs. Dalton, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance today? Thank you. Okay, Mr. Dodson, would you like to read the executive session language, please,
Glad
sir?
to. We need to consider executive session pursuant to KRS 61.8101C to discuss litigation, preparation, or defense, the public disclosure of which would jeopardize the board's position, and KRS 61-810-1B, deliberations on the future acquisition or sale of real property by a public agency, but only when publicity would be likely to affect the value of a specific piece of property to be acquired for public use or sold by a public agency.
Thank you, sir. Can I have a motion to go into executive session? Made by Mr. Dodson, seconded by Mrs. Sheffer. All those in favor? And that's 5-0. Recognition's in here. Oh, way down, okay. Okay, we are back in session from executive session. Board members, is there any action coming out of that?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir. First up, we're going to do is recognitions. So, sir, if you'd like to go.
Sure.
You want to do recognitions with me? Do you want to shake hands and kiss babies for me? Yeah. Hey, Lori, do we have batteries? Yeah, Lori.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. We have some recognitions that we'd like to make this evening. First, our community partners. We want to take this time to recognize some community partners who have helped elevate the educational experience for all of Oldham County. These community partners go above and beyond in helping our students, staff, and families. The Oldham County Health Department, the Oldham County Educational Foundation, and the Oldham County Physical Court have played a vital role in bringing Care Solace to Oldham County schools. It is important to note that we are one of the only districts who have community involvement in providing Care Solace. We are very grateful for the financial contributions to provide this program so our students, staff, and families have better access to mental health support. At this time, I'd like to invite Matthew Rhodes from the Oldham County Health Department. We have a couple of members from the Oldham County Educational Foundation. I'd like to invite them to come forward, and Judge Vogel from the Oldham County Physical Court to come forward and thank them for their support for Oldham County schools. And if you all please come forward, we have a pin to commemorate and really recognize that says Proud Partner Oldham County Schools. So if you all please come forward, we'd like to give this to you and just recognize and say thank you. And we'll take a photo here afterwards. Mr. Rhodes, thank you. Hi. It's good to see you. Judge Vogel, thanks for being here. All right. If we can get we'll try to square up and get a quick little group photo maybe. She promised. All right. Thank you. Give them a big hand, please. Yes. Thank you. Ladies, thank you. Thanks for being here. Safety is another high priority for our district, and our school resource officers are a vital component. Our school resource officers not only keep our campuses safe, but they also build trust and foster community throughout our buildings. We want to thank the LaGrange Police Chief, Greg Collette, the Oldham County Police Department Chief, Greg Smith, and the Oldham County Sheriff, Tim Wakefield, for their commitment to the safety of our students and staff. We appreciate their support and their collaboration. I've not had the opportunity to be in many districts and many communities across our state, and I cannot say that I've ever seen entities such as I just mentioned with the Oldham County Police Department, the LaGrange, and with the Sheriff's Department, all sitting around the same table trying to do how we can make sure that our students and staff stay safe in our schools. So, gentlemen, if you all would please come forward, we'd like to recognize you with a pin just to recognize our community, your support within our community. Please give them a hand. Sheriff. Chief, thank you. Thank you. Chief, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. We'll get a quick photo here. Okay. big round of applause, please. Next, we have our KMEA Professional Development Conference we'd like to recognize. We have several talented bands and choirs who have been invited to play at the annual KMEA Professional Development Conference in February. To get selected, bands and choirs send in a sample of music that is reviewed by a panel of judges. Groups from across the state compete for this honor, and only best groups are selected. The idea is to showcase groups at the conference to inspire educators and show them what is achievable. We would like to invite the directors to come receive a commendation certificate on behalf of these talented groups. And Ms. Sheffer, one of our board members, will help me with that. Thank you for teaching and inspiring them to achieve great things. So the groups selected from Oldham County Schools, I'll read those groups off, and as I read each group, please come forward. North Oldham High School Symphonic Band, and their director is Amanda Buckholtz. Please stay up here and we'll get a quick picture. North Oldham High School Clarinet Ensemble, and that again is the director, Ms. Buckholtz. North Oldham Middle School Treble Chorus, and that director is Tyler Smith. Oldham County Middle School Wind Ensemble, Director Tony Wise. And South Oldham Middle School Treble Choir, Kelsey Johnson. We will get a quick photo.
Sorry. Sir?
Yes, I'd like to, for our instructional session first up, I'd like to invite Mr. Rich Gravis, our Director of Personnel, to come forward and share an update with the Board of Education.
Good evening. Just want to come up tonight to give you an update of where we are. We're looking at the end of last year, the beginning of this year with our ins and outs and personnel. So, Jane. This is a 7-year trend. Presented this last year and obviously added this year. The main thing to kind of look at is the white line is our outs, total number of certified staff that we lost or have decided to leave since the end of last school year. You can see that's increasing. Just to kind of think about that number though, there's a lot involved in that. It could be retirements, it could be resignations. It's a very transient labor population right now, so we have a lot of people that move in and out of state. The number of teachers we gain from out of state is pretty remarkable every year. And so as we gain teachers, we're losing teachers just as their spouses may be relocating or something like that. But you can definitely see that's an upward trend. The big number that everybody's always interested about is looking at losses to our neighboring district in Jefferson County. You can see where that was pretty steady for several years, and then 2020, 21, or 21, 22, it started to uptick a little bit from the teens to 26, and then this past year, what we know so far, Out of those 201 teachers that we've lost, 57 of them were to Jefferson County. And then if you look at the gains, that had always been pretty even for some time. But you can see this year what we've tracked so far, and this is easier to track, our internal gains. We've received 12 teachers from JCPS that have moved to Oldham County. The reason that number is somewhat hard to track, like the 57, I mean, that's a solid number, but it could be higher. Just because we don't know necessarily where they're coming from until we get verification of experience back from their previous districts of where they've been to verify that officially, but that 57 is that number. The one thing, too, the one number in there, teachers looking to leave mid-year. So far, we only have one teacher that is looking to get out of their contract. Last year, we had 39. The year before that, 41. And then you can see that's stayed pretty steady prior to the 2021 year at the high teens, low 20s. So it's an upward trend that we can kind of come back and talk about. But as we go to the next slide, to just kind of give you an idea of where we are. So we talked about 201 teachers being out. So far, though, we've hired 201 certified staff. So we're kind of at a break even. Out of those 201, 122 are experienced teachers coming in with experience from previous teaching. 20 alternative certified teachers. Those are people that are in an Option 6 program that are getting certified or getting their teacher education preparation as they're teaching. So they're going to school every evening, working towards certification and eventually earning their Master's of Arts in teaching. 13 brand new teachers. We would have called them K-TIP teachers back in the day, but that program's no longer around. But 13 brand new teachers right out of undergraduate school. 37 emergency certified teachers.
Mr. Gravis, can I stop you?
Yeah.
Could you touch on what 13 brand new teachers, what that signals and what that means for perspective going back years even before COVID and what we're seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. That's out of all the numbers, that's probably the most alarming number that's up there, because that's telling you that there's people that are not, young people are not going into undergrad to get looking at education as a career field directly, directly from their undergrad. That number, I don't have hard numbers, Dr. Radford, on that, but I can tell you now going in my 8th year as personnel director, for example, going down to U of L's recruitment fair, we used to have lines of people waiting to come and talk to us about wanting to be in Oldham County schools. The past couple years, I mean, there's maybe 20, 25, 30 total graduates that are looking to graduate from U of L's education program as an undergrad. So you take that and you take that across the state, it's concerning. Universities are working on that. The big thing, though, is that how many people are looking at education as a second career. Like I said, going back to the alternative certification programs and also the emergency certified teachers, where that number is large at 37. But we're getting a lot of those teachers. Like last year, the number of emergency certified teachers we hired are coming back and getting into an Option 6 program and finding that education is a career choice and a career pathway they want to pursue. So that emergency certification gives them that taste of what it's like to be a classroom teacher, get that experience, and then say, yes, this is something I want to do, and I want to invest money tuition-wise to go back into and go back to school, or maybe say, hey, this isn't, and that's probably better for them to realize that before they're too much personally invested financially into making those kind of decisions. The other big thing, too, is looking at our active substitute teachers. I mean, this has really jumped up. First off, as a thank you to you all for raising the substitute pay. I think that has had a huge impact. We've also changed how we are looking at no longer hiring really like classified subs, but just paying any substitute teacher as a co-teacher. So that's helped people want to take more jobs. But 251 active substitutes is a super high number. It's close to an all-time high in my 7 years.
I would also just share, thank you, Mr. Gravis, share with the board that during my first year as superintendent, we were at that time, approximately 90 active subs that were available, and we were keeping school open every day. So it is and appreciate the board support and doing what we can to get that number to that level, because that is a big, big deal.
Yeah, it's huge. So it's phenomenal. And then just looking at the classified side, 89 new classified staff just hired, since the summer, the start of the fiscal year. So normally, again, pre-COVID, 2020, before kind of the teacher shortage really hit, we were normally hiring about 100 certified staff and 100 classified staff a summer. The classified staff has more or less kind of maintained at that same level. Obviously, we need to hire more, and we'll look at that here shortly. But the number of certified teachers, again, the transient nature of the workforce, and needing to find people that have that passion and want to pursue teaching as a career is super, super important. And as we continue working on our the recruitment, retention, and induction committee as well, with the work we're doing there to retain our teachers, is very important as well. Jane. So just kind of looking at where we are. So last year, I was here on August 29th. We had 152 total openings. Right now, we have 151 as of this morning. Those are just kind of the breakdowns of the bigger areas, like 27 coaches, 14 childcare, 12 ECS certified teachers, 27 ECS classified staff, 8 elementary, 5 high school, 4 middle school, and 22 maintenance and custodial. A couple things on those numbers, though. Just since I left to get here this afternoon, we've hired. We're going to hire an ECS certified teacher. I got a recommendation for an elementary teacher. That's going to be option 6, and we have a middle school teacher that just accepted a job. That's moving in from Indiana. So, I mean, these numbers are extremely, extremely fluid. And we hired a daycare aide. So that's just 4 since like 3:30 this afternoon. So it's pretty fluid. Any questions so far on any of these numbers? Don't want to just be up here just talking away. All right.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
On the first slide, the 201, I'm assuming you say end of year, like that's May, end of school year, is that
Yeah,
correct?
since end of school year, it's like, so we'll start getting like resignations or recommendations for non-renewal generally in March, April. So we're talking anyone that left at the end of last school year, the end of the 22-23 school year, all the way through the summer, beginning of this, start of this year. So 201 teachers have resigned or been non-renewed.
Okay. And do we do any kind of exit interview on those 201?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Does that include the jobs that were eliminated with the higher student count
So
in that 201?
So, good question. So with that too, that number is also probably a little inflated too, because we had ESSER positions that were funded through ESSER funds, through COVID funds, that we eliminated. So those numbers are in there as well. And then when we looked at changing the student-teacher ratio, some schools looked at cutting, but then through their daycare funds ended up more or less kind of keeping those positions as is, finding the internal funds to keep those positions there.
All right, thank you.
Yep. All right. So kind of looking at some pinch points. Nothing really new here from last year, but obviously secondary math and science is extremely difficult to find. Anything special ed, either whether it be certified or classified staff, or high needs areas. Our maintenance and custodial, as you saw on that last slide. Nurses is one that's kind of popped up this year. We have a couple nurses openings, and we're filling those right now with substitute nurses that Ms. Burgess has found to fill in those openings. Our child care, our after-school programs are always needing help. The more help they have, the more numbers the students they can take in, and then transportation, needing bus drivers and monitors. And then, anything for question-wise?
Board members, any other questions?
in our shortages in the high school, or maybe that's for Ms. Rafford, and I asked this prior, why cannot we not use instructional coaches? And a parent sent me a list of how we're missing physics and science. I believe that's on one of your graphs. To get us through this, because these kids are losing the potential college credits.
Yeah, so I think with using instructional coaches, we have in the past, even the last 2 years, used instructional coaches to teach, instruct, or substitute in classrooms. The other thing that we're trying to also be very intentional and mindful about is retention, because of what they are hired to do and the positions that they agreed to do. Although I think if you talk to all of our instructional coaches I've spoken with have really stepped up whenever they've been called or needed. That is something that we have to be very mindful of. Physics is an area that we've lost some physics teachers, and trying to find physics teachers. As you heard Mr. Gravis talk about, physics teachers are not coming out of undergrad, pursuing teaching, because they're not there. So we're really having to rely on our recruitment efforts and getting physics teachers from other counties, out of state. And so we've probably, I don't know the number, it's a small number, but it has impacted some student learning. That is for sure.
Right. Yeah, and we have teachers in all of our openings. I'm just looking at the list here. There's substitutes, long-term subs, condensed classes. We have 9 teachers across the district that are picking up, that have given up their planning period and are getting paid extra, but are picking up classes. So the classes are covered. I know, like in one of the physics openings, we have a long-term sub, and they're kind of doing that through an online program. It's not ideal, but when you don't have a certified physics teacher, you got to make do with the best options available.
And I will say some recruitment efforts have allowed us there are some candidates who have expressed interest in teaching for us that are retired, and they have some timelines that they have to meet in terms of KTRS. There are some efforts that we're trying to make because, for example, we've had some folks that have retired that we know have retired in other counties that we might know or from us, and so we can't contact them, but we can reach out to them after a threshold to see if they're interested to come and work for us. So we're exhausting every option that we have, and trying to make sure that we have somebody available to teach the students for what their schedule says.
And just to add on to that too, our best recruitment is being a sub. When I was at Oldham County High School, we hired a lot of teachers that were previous subs. Again, that as a sub, it gives you the opportunity to test like all the schools, all the levels, find out what is your best fit. And it's also a great recruitment tool for principals to see how you handle your classroom, how you handle, just the day-to-day things. And so the more subs we get, we're going to pull more of those people who are going to want to say, hey, I want to do this full time. This is something I want to do. So the more subs we're getting, the better chance we're going to find of recruiting more teachers into the classroom.
Board members, any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Gravis.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it.
You go next. Thank you, Mr. Gravis. Next up, we have Mr. Michael Williams to talk with the board about student enrollment.
Welcome, Mr. Williams.
Good evening. So we are here to talk about day one enrollment. So our enrollment on August 9th, 2023, that first day was 11,762 students. When you compare that to the first day of, of the 22-23 school year, we had an enrollment of 11,991 students. So that would be a loss of 229 students from day one of this year compared to day one of last year. Okay, when you look at that as compared to projections, which are done at the end of the first month, we are currently on that day one, we would be 436 students under projection. Okay, so other than that, we have 2 schools that are at 99% capacity or higher. But then I went and looked at the numbers today. So as I look at day 14, so today's enrollment, total enrollment for the district is 11,991. So we actually got back to what was day one of 22-23. Okay, but then I also, out of curiosity, looked at what day 14 of 22-23 was, and we are actually, that was actually 12,204, so we're 213 still below day 14 of 22-23, but only 207 below projection. So we've gained those numbers back some from the 436, we're down to only 207 under projection. We are still getting students, and that happens pretty much all the time, but we are still gaining students all the time. And I am more than happy to answer any questions.
How does that compare to how we're being funded for the past, is it 2018, 2019?
So we are still down, like our rates from 1920 or 1819 are still down. But last year was what we call the first baseline year, is what KDE will start to look at. The better comparison will be what we look at as compared to growth factor, which is done at the end of the second month, because that number was live last year, and so it will be a good comparison to where we are at the end of the second month this year to see if we're growing or if we're at least maintaining.
Okay, thanks.
Board members, any other questions? Michael, just because people will ask, what are the two schools that were at high capacities?
Hold on, I can tell you. I didn't write that on my notes.
South High and South Middle.
South High and South Middle, because South High doesn't have its BG1 yet, so its capacity number will come down. I will also tell you, in the other side of my world, there are, massive new subdivisions that are being proposed, so that's going to change a lot of things.
And something I would share with the board is capacity planning ordinance that we have with the with planning and zoning, that our county, we can only build so many housing units. And Mr. Williams can speak to that, but in other words, something that's put in place years ago that to help us be able to handle any new growth, that's certainly a factor that benefits us, so that way we don't get too big too fast.
Correct. So, I mean, in that, the capacity numbers, when you all approve a capacity letter, now we have agreed that based on a ratio, the minimum number of subdivision will be guaranteed is 15 units per year. Okay, it can be as high as 35, but it's the whole it's the whole campus capacity that plays into that number, plus any growth that's already been approved. So as more subdivisions come online, I have that all in my system, and I can literally say, here's how many were approved, here how many are left, plus the current capacity on that campus, and then we make that recommendation, and usually the Planning Commission will adopt our recommendation. And I will say, as Dr. Radford said, we are the only district in the state that actually has that, which is a coup for us, because it has been able to help us at least manage growth through the years.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Board members, any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
Next, Ms. Dalton, I'd like to invite you to come forward and share updates with ACT and Mr. Jacobson.
Yeah, so I'm going to share some information about our AP data from last school year, and then Ms. Dalton has ACT data for you all as well. So first slide, one more slide, Jane, is just we offer 29 different AP tracks in Oldham County Schools. Some of these are obviously courses taken by students in our building, in our 3 traditional high schools, some here at Arvin, also some on Edgenuity. And so the courses up here, just for your information, are courses that students sat for exams in the spring of last school year. And so tests taken in the district, 2,430 total AP exams were taken. And what I've provided here for you is the graph on the right is a 5-year trajectory of the number of AP exams taken in Oldham County schools. 2019 certainly is pre-COVID, and then 2020, students sat for AP exams right after really the pandemic hit, and those were not, that was certainly a little bit of a different time. Through COVID, the number of exams dropped, and then we've seen a little bit of increase in the total number of AP exams taken last year. On the left are the 10 top AP courses that are taken in Oldham County schools. You can give a quick look to the most popular AP classes that are taken by our students. The next slide talks about some scores, but just a little tidbit here. We had, of the 2,430 exams taken, there were 1,416 students who passed exams, and so that's a 70% pass rate, which is really, really impressive when you compare our district to the state and also the rest of the world, countries that take AP exams. So the next slide here is just a graph of percentage of students scoring 3 or more. So on the AP exam, you can score a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 being the best. Anything 3 or above is considered passing. The black bar there is our district and how students' percentage of passing scores on, again, the top 10 most popular AP classes. The red bar is the state of Kentucky, so that compares us to all districts in the state, which in every AP test that we've taken, our pass rate was higher than the state average, and then I believe maybe all but one AP test, our percent pass rate was better than the global test scores, is what they say. And then the final slide for AP is just the average scores on exams. And so, again, 3 being a passing score, the majority of all of the AP exams that our students took on average, we expect our majority of our students to score a 3 or higher and pass those exams. And that is just a quick snapshot of AP from last year. I'm not sure if you all have any questions on AP specific items.
Matt, I know that it's not on here, but I'm wondering what it looks like on dual credit classes, because I just wonder if a little bit of the drop in AP would mean a little bit of an increase on dual credit as some students decide that they would rather do dual credit than an AP course.
It's a great question, and something I'd be happy to provide for you all. I do think that the decrease in the number of AP exams, certainly COVID has something to do with that, but secondly, the rise of dual credit in Oldham County schools and that option that we provide to families. AP and dual credit are certainly 2 excellent ways for our students to earn college credit. They both provide different benefits to students and families, and we certainly leave it up to our students and their families to do what's best for them. But I can get you all the information because I suspect the rise in dual credit classes that our students are taking in the college credit there may correlate to the drop in the number of AP exams for sure.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt.
Any other questions? All right, Ms. Dalton.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobson. Ms. Jenna Dalton, our middle school level director, is going to share with you the ACT update.
Good evening. So just a snapshot again of the district ACT. So some background information that is a little bit different than years past is that in 22-23 we had 1,267 valid tests, more valid tests than in previous years. And that is partly due to 2 things. Our juniors were offered the opportunity to take the ACT twice. So they took it in November with the district, and then they took the state test in March. Additionally, last year, KDE offered an optional senior window in October. So that is important to understand. And then when I look at 23-24, there are some implications to going into this year when I look at the data. And so I actually want to go from the bottom. So again, this year, the seniors are being offered the KDE optional ACT in October. because of that, the juniors this year cannot take the test twice. And so that has been a change that we have been working through with our high school principals. So last year, even though they took it in November, they cannot take it this year in November. The good news, though, is those juniors were able to take the pre-ACT as sophomores. So they did have some practice. But that does bring us to the sophomores this year. And so the difference between the pre-ACT and the ACT is the pre-ACT is paper test. ACT is online. And when we get to the very last slide of the ACT, I think that you will see that we had some good results from these students taking the ACT twice. There was an increase in scores. And so this year, in working with the high school principals, we are looking forward to doing the actual ACT this spring with our sophomores versus the pre-ACT to give them practice online since we weren't able to do it with our juniors in November. So trying to think forward. So looking at the previous 5 years, this is just the March data. I did not include in on this year, 22-23, the November data, so I just wanted to look at March for the past 5 years. You can certainly tell in COVID, after the slide there between COVID, the 21.9, we're looking at the composite scores. I included everything there, but when it comes to ACT, what we really want to focus on is what was that composite score and the averages. And so coming out of COVID, 21.9, we slid, and now we're starting to come back up. So taking a look at the next slide, very similar to Mr. Jacobson's, the black is our district right there. We are outperforming the state and the nation in all of the categories, so the composite score of math, science, English, and reading. So this slide right here is the super score. And so as you can imagine, some students will take that several times. They'll take the ACT several times. In fact, when I pulled the data, there were several students who took it 4 times.
Jenna, can you go back? We don't have that slide, the one before this. We don't have that in our presentation. So can you just hold on 1 second
Yes,
so
ma'am.
we can look at that?
And I have the actual numbers on there. It's a bar graph, but I can get those to you.
Ms. Dalton can also send that to you as well if you like. Board members, just let me know.
Yes, could you email that one to us?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. So the super score, several students will take the test several times. They want the best score, obviously, to report to colleges. And so what I did with this data is when I pulled all the data, I took the students and I just wanted to see, like, if the colleges are taking their top score, what would our data look like if I compiled the composite super score for our district? And so taking a look at that is what those scores would be. So paying specific attention to reading, I mean, that it goes up to where it was in March of 21-22. But the super score, again, definitely knowing that last year our juniors took a lot more tests than they previously did. And our last slide was some really exciting data. I'm sure the high school principals, I don't think they have seen yet, but certainly shows that their efforts in taking the test twice paid off. So that middle line right there is we increased in every single area from when our juniors took the test. So we had 944 juniors take the test in November to 958 in March. And in every area, we went up. So we saw a lot of growth and a lot of value in taking the test twice, which is why when we found out our juniors this year could not take it, you know, a little upset, but we at least know that they took the pre-ACT as sophomores, and then now knowing, planning ahead, if that is the way KDE is going to continue, if they're going to continue to offer this optional senior test, then we'll just plan ahead to offer the ACT to our sophomores in the spring. Any questions?
I would just like to point out one important note. ACT changed, I believe, 2 years ago. It used to be if you retook the test, you had to take all sections of it, and that was your new score. And now they've done it a little bit different, where if I take it again and I get a better math score but a worse reading score, it's going to take my higher math score and it's going to leave my highest reading score and not replace it for the super score and for my test. So I just want to point that out to parents that may not know that. It used to be you had to retake the entire thing, and now it will replace your section by section scores if you score higher, and if you score lower, it doesn't count against you
It'll take the highest, yep.
For a super score.
for your
Well,
super score and
your
for your
portable
section.
score.
But not all schools take a super score, right?
Not all colleges take a
Correct.
super score, correct. Questions? All right, thank you. I'll make sure I'll get that sent to you.
Thank you. Sir?
So next up, I'd like to invite Dr. Shelton to come forward and give the treasurer's report.
So excuse me, I wanted to mention a couple of things before start. One, at each of your spots there was the annual audit letter that was there for each of you to sign.
We gave them to Jane.
Okay, just wanted to make
Thank
sure
you.
you saw those and got those. I appreciate you doing that. The auditors are in and working now, and so that will save some time to get those done, so we appreciate that. The second thing I wanted to mention, at the beginning when the agenda was amended, there was a handout that was distributed to each one of you that I wanted to make sure that you saw. That's a list of kind of the broad categories of areas that I focused on with the finance team to work on since I started in January. You know, one of the things that we've talked about was, you know, obviously the board wanted to offer the largest raise they could, and then when we got time to talk about the stipend that you recently approved, the question was why now? I wanted to make sure, you know, that we closed out the year and felt very good about our balances and our numbers, and so I wanted you all to have this. I'd shared it with Dr. Radford, and he wanted to provide it to you all so that you all could see the kind of the broad categories of the areas, starting with the audit and working through that I've kind of focused on. And if you have any questions on that, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Dr. Shelton, for this list. It's very helpful.
On the treasurer's report, I don't want to discount any type of financial report because they're obviously all very important, but I would just say to you, this is the first month of the fiscal year in July, and it has the least activity in it. Next month, you'll see a lot more activity, obviously, with school starting and with, you know, much greater amount of salaries with people coming back to work and all. So there's not a lot of activity. We were certainly closing out the end of the 22-23 year. But starting on the report number 1, as you're used to seeing, is the summary data of receipts and disbursements and our balances. And basically, we went from total in the beginning balances about $59.2 million to the ending balance of $58.9. And then below that, you have a breakdown of the bonded construction funds by category and the expenditures there. And at the very bottom there, of course, that is the investment account that we've been maintaining. That is the account that we maintain basically to hold our contingency and any extra reserves. It will be reduced coming up here in September because that's where the money that we're using to pay the stipend that you approve will come out of that account. So just wanted to point that out. On the second report, report number 2, is the breakdown of the funds balances by category and all the individual funds to tie back to the total amount that's on the front page. And so I won't read those to you, but you can see how that's broken down by fund. On the report number 3, this is a historical analysis report, and again, I don't want to discount any financial information, but 1 month is very difficult to compare, you know, for any level of true historical analysis. We're not receiving, obviously, any tax revenue at this point. That'll start happening this fall, and salaries are very low in the summer. but we wanted to be, from a consistency basis, wanted to provide the report to you. And then following that, we have the normal reports, report number 4, which is the 4-year trend that shows you some primary accounts and their revenue and expense areas and their 4-year trend across there for, and those follow also for the capital outlay and building fund. And then finally, the report that I'd always like to mention to you is the balance sheet report, which shows a very strong, with our fund balance and basically still being at the same $24 million level it was at the end of the last fiscal year. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have on the report at this time.
Board members, any questions for Dr. Shelton? Okay. Your recommendation, sir?
Yeah, recommend to approve?
Can I have a motion to approve the treasurer's report made by Mr. Dodson, seconded by Mrs. Sheffer? All those in favor? And that's 5-0. Next up, we have 3 sets of minutes to approve. The first one is July 31st meeting. Does anybody have any changes or additions to this? No. Can I get a recommendation to approve? Made by Mrs. Clem, seconded by Mrs. Sheffer. All those in favor? And that's 5-0. Next, we have our August 8th special called meeting minutes. Any additions or changes to those? Can I get a recommendation to approve? Made by Mrs. Clem, seconded by Mrs. Dodson, Mr. Dodson. Sorry, Larry. All those in favor, and that's 5-0. And finally, we have August 21st special called meeting minutes to approve. Any changes or additions to those? Can I get a recommendation to approve? Made by Mrs. Sheffer, seconded by Mrs. Clem. All those in favor, and that's 5-0. Next up, sir, personnel.
Yes, personnel report is in your packet and recommend to approve as presented.
Do we approve it or just take it under advisement?
Under advisement, I'm sorry.
Thank you. All right, next we have consent items. Sir?
Yes, recommend to approve the consent items as presented.
Board members, any questions on the consent items that are included in the packet?
Brent's not here, is he?
Brent is here.
Where is he?
Mr. Bohannon, could you come to the microphone, please, sir?
For the B4, the paving, B7, the paving behind the new field, Oldham County High School.
Yes, sir.
Are all the pits in for the track? Or are they gonna be put in, like the long jump, all that?
The concrete's in place
All right.
for those, located in the triple jump and long jump is located in the scoreboard D zone. And the high jump pit, or the high jump arc will be in the ticket booth D zone.
All right, thank you.
What about shot put?
Shot put will be located outside the track where it was existing position. And then the discus will be on the outside of the track past the shot put, throwing onto the practice field.
And only one shot put or 2?
One shot put. One shot put, one discus, 2 separate.
When is all the debris gonna be removed? Will it be removed by the time they had that huge cross-country meet?
That was this past weekend, so no.
No, they have another one. That was a mess.
Yeah, there was a
But
mess.
October, I think, 7th.
What debris are we talking about specifically?
The-
Haunted Woods.
Yeah, the Haunted Woods. There's a big pile supposedly behind the,
Oh, the stockpiled dirt
yeah.
and rock
and
removal
concrete.
and concrete? Yeah. When is the next track meet that you're talking about, or the
I think
cross-country?
October
It's October
7th.
7th or 4th.
Okay, I'll make sure that we get that taken care of. before
I have it
7th.
written down.
I think it's the
but
7th.
Is it possible?
Yeah, I'll make sure we get done before that.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions about consent items? Okay.
No, sir.
I'll be back in a minute.
Board members, any other questions on consent items? Your recommendation, sir?
Yeah, recommend to approve.
Can I get a motion to approve the consent items made by Mrs. Sheffer, seconded by Mr. Dodson? All those in favor? And that's 5-0. Next up, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Next, we have superintendent reports. We have one report, and I'll invite Mr. Bohannon to come back and share with you a construction update specifically about Oldham County High School and the Spectator Gym.
Welcome, Mr. Bohannon.
Thank you. Tonight, for your consideration, the packets that were left with you were supplemental information that include the information about the change order, the enclosure, and the backup documentation supporting the request for change. During the demolition of Oldham County High School's gym roof, this would be bid package 3 for a ongoing roof and foundation repairs project that's been going on for about 3 years now over there now. There was discovered that a existing portion of the Texum deck had deteriorated beyond repair and requires structural improvements to the gym itself. Change order number 1 for this phase of the project, or this bid package, I should say, proposes additional costs to the Oldham County High School roof and foundation repairs bid package 3 project for the needed structural repairs to the gym roof. K. Norman Berry Architects and the Facilities Department have reviewed the change order and are recommending approval of the change order number 1 in the amount of $81,000 to Parco Construction Group. Board approval of this change order, which exceeds $25,000, will be subject to KDE's approval. And I believe that that would be up for y'all's action later this evening. But I wanted to give you all the opportunity to ask any questions before taking action on that. If you refer to the page, let's see, the second page of your packet is the AIA change order, the backup supplemental. The other portion of the action that we're requesting tonight is a revised BG1. Due to the size of the change order, the revisions to the BG1 will be required before we can execute that change order through KDE. So tonight's action will revise the BG1. It will give us the go-ahead to approve the change order and take action on that, and then also give the Facilities Department the authorization to go ahead and execute all of that paperwork. So the revised BG1 is included in your packet there, and a reminder that that includes all 3 phases of this project. Bid package 1, which was the core roof, bid package 2, which was the foundation and stairs, and then bid package 3, which is the gym roof. Also, I included in there, just for your all's reference, this won't be included in the packet sent to KDE, but just kind of a project summary that better kind of breaks out the different phases of that and how that affects the overall budget of the project.
Any questions, board members?
How much added time getting all this done?
Well, we've given the contractor the directive that we were coming to you all for approval tonight, and we have asked that they start stacking materials ahead of anticipation of a approval, and then as soon as we get, if the board so chooses to approve this recommendation tonight, then they will get immediate notice to proceed. So that, also included in there on the last page is a more of detailed description of the structural improvements that will be made to the building.
Brian, can you also give a little history? I know some parents were really upset about the fact that the timing of everything. Can you talk a little bit about what happened this summer and why it got pushed back? And
yes, absolutely.
All of
So,
those,
as I said, this is kind of the final phase of this project, which we started back 2018, I think, before COVID, really, with the main building roof replacement. Then we've moved to the foundation repairs project. This is all to kind of weatherproof that building a lot better than it has been in the past. We've had ongoing issues with water infiltration in the lower levels in the girls' basketball locker room and the volleyball locker room. So all of these improvements are to seal up that building so that we can actually get in there and make some renovations and do what we need to the interior. While we're doing these improvements to the exterior of the building, there is ongoing improvements to the interior as well. This roof could not be replaced while students are under it. for this reason specifically, in case there was a structural issue that was noticed or developed while the roof was being removed. So we had to wait until the school year ended, and specifically after June 12th or something like that, when their Fit for Life program ended, which is their summer PE program. So as soon as their summer PE program completed, demolition on the roof began. And the scheduled completion date was prior to the start of school. The structural issue was noticed first about a week prior to that, with the initial investigation showing a 4x4 foot area that needed to be replaced. The contractor still felt that we could get that done before school started. And then once they continued to kind of remove that portion, we noticed that it's the, instead of a 4x4 area, it was a 4x4 area and then 40 feet down the roof that had been deteriorated at some point in time in the last 60 years, or over the last 60 years. So with this, with the board's approval tonight, the roof membrane will be able to continue. The structural improvements that need to be made will be from the underside of the roof. So scaffolding will need to be placed because of the area that is affected of the roof is half over the gym floor and then half over the mezzanine. So they'll have to erect a scaffolding to reach the bowstring trusses up there to make those changes, which will add a structural metal deck to the underside of that.
And the rain did not help us this summer either, correct?
The rain did not help us this summer as far as the demolition goes, or we would have recognized this probably a week earlier or 2 weeks earlier.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Any other questions?
Board members, any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you all.
Okay, we did recognitions. Now we're on public expression. Mr. Dotson, would you like to read public expression policy?
The public and the news media are permitted to attend all open meetings of the board. No person may be required to give identification in order to attend such meeting. The exception is the chairperson may impose conditions upon attendance at a given meeting only if such conditions are required for the maintenance of order. The board as a whole shall have the final decision as to the appropriateness of all rulings.
Sorry.
Public comment for each regular meeting shall include a public comment period of at least 15 minutes. Any board rules and policies regarding conduct during board meeting shall apply during the public comment period. Individuals or groups should contact the office of the superintendent prior to the next scheduled meeting in order to be considered for inclusion on the agenda. Persons wishing to address the board must first be recognized by the chairperson. Persons who wish to address an agenda item should seek recognition at the time the board considers that particular item. Persons who wish to address the board on a non-agenda item, agenda concern, are asked to seek recognition from the chairperson at the presentation item on the agenda. Speakers may be required the name and address of the speaker. The chairpersons may rule on the relevance of the topic to the board agenda. The chairperson may also establish time limits for speakers as may be required to maintain order to ensure expedient conduct of the board's business. The board as a whole shall have the final decision as to the appropriateness of all rulings. Non-agenda items, the board will not take official action on non-agenda issues introduced by the public in the meeting at which they are first introduced.
Thank you, sir. Board members, we have 10 individuals that want to speak tonight. Do I have a recommendation on time?
3 minutes.
4 minutes, plus a wrap-up.
Okay.
No, well, you could put it up to 5 minutes with a wrap-up possibly.
I'm good with 4 minutes.
4 minutes?
4 minutes with no wrap-up?
4
I
minutes.
want the wrap-up, but ma'am, we'll let it go.
Okay. 4 minutes is going to be the time. Keen Hosier is our first speaker. Yes.
I'll be happy to do it. Well, I'm getting conflicting on all you.
Is his name Keenan?
Keen.
Yeah, you did a good job on my name, by the way. Thank you very much. Looking at some of the data over school funding over the last several years, and it appears that Oldham County school students are underfunded relative to the students across the state of Kentucky. Obviously, property taxes are relatively high in Oldham County, among the highest in the nation. I understand that a good portion of this money goes to other counties through the SEEK program. I realize that it's not directly distributed to other counties. However, the amount that comes back to us from the state is decreased. We also know that the fact that the amount of SEEK money that is coming back to Oldham County is decreased has been decreasing at a pretty rapid pace over the last several years. What is being done at the county level to address this so that we can increase funding for our students? And what is being done on behalf of the Oldham County School Board to go and lobby at the state level to make sure that our students are at least at an equitable rate compared to the rest of the state? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We'll have a wrap-up at the end and address some things. Linda Staziowski. I tried.
Okay. I appreciate the 4 minutes because now I can actually breathe between my sentences instead of just a run-on. So, good evening. I appreciate this opportunity to express my interest in recognizing some important people. First, I'd like to acknowledge our teachers for giving 200% on a good day and even more while covering the extra classes. Second, I'd like to thank the parents who are dedicated to gain accurate information and research policies to keep other parents informed. We all can't be at these meetings every month to show our concern, let alone follow every decision the board makes. My main reason for being here tonight is in regards to the Arvin Center. It's an amazing place that offers student enrichment, hands-on vocational skills, real-life opportunities, community involvement, and team building. Every student here has a supportive environment in order to excel. But the specific group I'm talking about is the Young Adult Transition Program, the YATP. I'm sure many people are unaware of this extraordinary group of students we have on campus. Briefly, they are ages 18 to 21 with significant cognitive impairment. They have a positive impact on everyone they meet. Check out their Facebook page, highlighting the incredible work they do. Unfortunately, that doesn't get shared on the Oldham County Schools page, by the way. I don't know if you've noticed that. We should be showcasing these students in this program just as proudly as all the others in our county. But no one knows they exist until it's needed for their child. My daughter might have the chance to attend, depending on what the administration decides this year. I heard there's serious consideration to move the YATP out of Arvin, where they thrive, and into one of three options: the Annex, which is all administrative offices; North Oldham, which has very few students attend from there; and Cedar Lake Lodge, which is a private provider of services with adults with disabilities. A committee will now, apparently a committee is now be gathering information to make this decision. My questions for you: why move them? What data supports this? Their room in this building was designed specifically for them, and you'll be sending a message, a bad optic, to the students and the community that their needs are not a priority. Who is on the committee to represent the stakeholders? Parents, teachers, someone from the Office of Vocational Rehab? People who can give input on real-life effects this move will have on these students. There is lack of trust in the process, since there was no transparency when I heard about this in May, the attempt to make this decision and have it in effect immediately this August, without contacting any parents. What is the process involved to get permission to move them off property? Why Cedar Lake? Why not Pillar or others? Cedar Lake was even present in Arvin before school started, and they're permitted to send home flyers inviting families to a workshop. My child will not be attending if this is moved to Cedar Lake, but maybe that's what you want. Maybe you're hoping to dissolve the program with Oldham County Schools and deny this wonderful opportunity to these students who need it most. I still have faith in this district, I understand we're trying to meet the needs of all the students, but it looks like we're discarding the ones who make up the smallest group and silencing the softest voice, when we should be screaming from the rooftops how proud we are of this amazing program and our supportive community that they're out in there. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Wanda.
This is my 5-minute version
Thank you.
before my cut.
Sarah Ignacio is next. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Ignacio, and I'm the parent of 2 children in the Oldham County School District. Due to the recent news with mask mandates and COVID returning, mask mandates being imposed throughout colleges, universities, and businesses, I am preemptively discussing mask mandates before this has a chance to go to a school board vote. Last week, Attorney Chris Weist won a lawsuit in the state of Kentucky, and I quote, "Kentucky public agencies may not condition attendance at a meeting on wearing a mask. So if mask mandates are put back in place, you cannot refuse anyone entrance to a school board meeting just because that individual is not wearing a mask." Several school board members were opposed to masking children while running for the school board. If this comes to a vote, I urge you to vote against any mask mandates being imposed in Oldham County schools. When my son was 8 years old, he had a severe allergic reaction while he was at after-school care. His lips swelled to 3 times their normal size. He had never had any type of reaction like that before. The after-school care director noticed it and called me. They considered administering an EpiPen. I took him to his doctor, who administered a high dose of Benadryl and sent him to the emergency room, where he spent over 3 hours being monitored. His reaction was so severe that he could not walk into the emergency room. Had the mask mandate been in place, it had just been lifted just before this, his reaction with his severely swollen lips would have gone unnoticed. He could barely talk due to his swollen lips and throat. He was only 8 years old and did not speak up, but the after-school director noticed the problem immediately because he was not wearing a facial covering. Ultimately, he went through a battery of seasonal and food allergy testing along with other blood work. He was tested for penicillin allergy and surprisingly tested positive for it. He has had penicillin many times in the past with no issues, and he was on day 3 of penicillin. With various allergies, some unknown, it is a risk to mask children. Also, some children have breathing issues, and masks get in the way of free-flowing oxygen. When my son was mandated to wear masks, he chewed holes in his masks. He came home with his masks soggy, wet, and filthy dirty. When children drop their masks on the floor or even in the restroom, they put them right back on their faces. And they are handling these masks all day with unclean hands and then continuing to breathe germs and bacteria. My oldest son contracted COVID while the mask mandate was in place, so the mask was not even effective. Masking children can cause speech problems, learning challenges, distractions, introduction to other germs through their masks, and can hide problems that I mentioned, such as severe allergic reactions. Our lungs are designed to freely inhale oxygen without inhaling or exhaled carbon dioxide. I think if the school board votes to mask students, you will see resistance and parents pulling their children from the school system, further reducing enrollment rates, which leads to further financial problems for the district. I urge you to vote against mask mandates in our school if this comes to a vote. Also, something on a separate topic. I'm very concerned about the loss of teachers throughout the district. I mentioned this last month too. I'm hearing from teachers who are afraid to speak up because of the fear of retaliation. Please address these concerns so that the teachers feel there is more of an open door policy. Or please provide a way for teachers to express concerns anonymously. I would also be interested to see if you are implementing other solutions, such as exit interviews on all staffs and teachers. I did hear somebody mention that earlier in the school board, so I didn't know if that was for all staff, but to try to discover why teachers are leaving. Thank you.
Yeah, it was.
Sarah Little.
I actually have a question before my time starts. Jason Radford, for the betterment of Oldham County Schools, will you, on or before September 1st, 2023, voluntarily terminate your contract with the Oldham County Board of Education as Oldham County School Superintendent? You could answer that.
No, you can't.
All right. Then, you can start my time. I'll speak quickly so everybody try to keep up here. Board, the superintendent is the leader of our district. A leader has several qualities, including self-awareness, credibility, relationship building, taking action, humility, authenticity, and truthfulness, empowering others, and being a role model. Jason Radford fails at each of these qualities as a leader and is therefore not the right person to continue heading our school district to fix problems and ensure students experience excellence. Jason Radford fails to recognize and admit problems and therefore cannot be a catalyst to change them. Before school started, parents were assured via media there would be a teacher in every classroom. Starting our third full week of school, that promise is still not fulfilled. When directly questioned about that pledge, Jason Radford stated he didn't recall saying that, but certainly had instead meant a certified staff member would be present in every room. This also still has not happened. Our own superintendent doesn't tell the truth or acknowledge what our classroom staffing looks like. How can he lead us in avenues of correction? Jason Radford has dragged the board into several lawsuits already. Despite costing our district money, time, and efforts, he has been found at fault thus far in each of them. In one settled charge, our own superintendent was found to have wrongly terminated a tenured employee without just cause or due process. The decision was found unwarranted and a violation of employment rights. Certainly that demonstrates a leader who can be a role model and fully focused on his job duties for the district. Jason Radford has not demonstrated leadership qualities, garnering credibility, or building relationships. In fact, he does not even reside full-time in the county, pay property taxes, or send his kids to our Oldham County schools. He is not a stakeholder in the success of our county or schools. Jason Radford has most definitely not built relationships, taken action, or empowered others to better our schools. In fact, he was directly hostile and disrespectful to parents and teachers who had prepared a comprehensive comparison of literacy performance and programs in our district. The evidence contained within that analysis overwhelmingly showed our current programs are actually harming our students. Yet he admitted to not even opening the information because the title included demand for action. Overwhelming evidence should most definitely demand action if the true focus is on student success. Jason Radford has been in violation of the conduct clause of his contract by being dishonest and lacking moral turpitude by not implementing best practices within the curriculum. He has failed to uphold the duties incident to his office imposed by law, including 16 KAR 1020 and KRS 161.028, regarding the ethical conduct of educators. He has knowingly made false and malicious statements about colleagues, as proven in an already concluded employment suit. He often knowingly distorts and misrepresents facts concerning educational issues and does not exemplify behaviors which maintain the dignity and integrity of the profession. All of these examples are a few of many. All demonstrate not only violation of the terms of his employment, but also prove he is not the right person to serve as leader of Oldham County Schools. We are not going to be a district that can experience excellence with Jason Radford at the helm. Our board has a duty to the students of Oldham County to take action to hold our superintendent accountable and to ensure future superintendents actually fulfill their duties as leader instead of detract. Our students deserve better than Jason Radford as superintendent. Thank you.
Dr. Shepard? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I know his name. Okay, sorry.
Fine. I must say thank you to the board members that are working tirelessly to make our school district great. My name is Izzy Amara Ogwibe Shepard, and I am a proud parent of 3 Oldham County Schools children. Oldham County Schools have many good teachers and support staffs, but there is just so many that they can do when the decision power lies on you all. We moved from Baltimore in 2018 in search of the world-class education that we had, Oldham County Schools was offering. But little did we know that we will be paying high taxes for almost a substandard education that we are seeing now in Oldham County. Dr. Radford, some of us are curious to know why our superintendent, the superintendent of the world-class educational system, kept his family in a different school district. Is it that you don't want the best for your children? Or are you deceiving the Oldham County legal residents that are paying high taxes to keep their children in Oldham County schools? Let's talk about special education. Board members, are you aware that some of the schools are constantly violating the children's IEP and 504 plans due to the little resources you left them with, while you fund things that doesn't necessarily benefit our children's education, like this fire logo? Are you aware that violating the KISS 504 or IEP can result in getting the Department of Education involved, which can cause termination of any Department of Education funding from such schools? Also, it can result in the Department of Justice judicial proceedings. Sometime last year, I had emailed the Director of Special Education from the district office about an evidence-based application for anger management to help kids in Oldham County who has IEPs, including my child. I first of all presented that during an IEP meeting. And the school IEP said, well, we're already doing that. Well, if you are doing that, why is he not improving very much? It wasn't their fault, though. They had redirected me to email the district. I did. And it took weeks or more than that before I got a response. The response I got is, well, I will follow up with the district assistive technology person. After a few weeks, I got another email that while this app is not approved, it's not among the approved apps in this district, at least I know that Shelby County School System does use that app, and it's based on evidence. But I was wondering, what type of apps are you using? The director said, well, if you want me to set an IEP meeting so we can talk about it. I don't want any IEP meeting. I want you to give me facts. Tell me why this app is not approved. Because I know, as an occupational therapist, as someone who has spent over 15 years in college, at least I know a little bit. Maybe not much. Maybe I have an accent, but I can read and I can understand. And I have my child in the school. And apart from my child, which I help, there are other parents, thousands or hundreds, that application can help, because you can get one subscription for each school or even for the OT, because I understand that OT, PT, speech, they go the entire district. As you make them go through a big, large caseload, that special education is not even very funded. They are understaffed, which one therapist having more than 100 kids on their caseload. And that is why they maybe do 30 minutes. They jump in and jump out. It's not their fault. I'm not blaming them, but I'm blaming the board. You can do better. As I said, you know how much you spend in creating this fire logo that each and every member of the board can create within 5 minutes with Canva, free version, or maybe the pro version of $6 a month, can create that logo.
Ma'am, your time's up.
My time is up?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, please make Oldham County schools great again.
Thank you. Teresa DeLu. Teresa DeLu.
Hi, thank you for being here. Grayson's back in school, and he's happy to ride the bus and happy to be in 8th grade. But I was having lunch with a granddaughter, like on the bench, like we've been doing for the past year. And in respect to the other person, we were talking. They were having lunch also on the bench. They're not from here, like I am, and it wasn't positive. It wasn't like, oh, I feel welcome here. And I encourage them to come and talk to you, theirself. And again, I want to plead with you the schools that are still not allowing parents in for safety reasons, that they back that up with facts, data, and we're all for safety. But we want to make sure it's not being done out of convenience. Because before COVID, it wasn't. That we got used to having us out of the schools. So the schools that are still doing it, then I think they owe it to the wonderful parents, grandparents of the school district. Why? Not just because it's safety. That's fine. And then again, I brought it up. If it's for safety and they have the data to back it up and all that stuff, then fine. Then it doesn't need to be crossed because that's not safe for our kids. So I want the schools that are not allowed, that are using safety, and if it is, to please do it in the least restrictive way and to make your parents feel welcome and like we're not criminals. Just try to be a little bit more parent-friendly. My granddaughter and I, we have a wonderful time. It took some getting used to, but to be quite honest, we have a wonderful time. And we're going to work on having a friend eat with us. So I encourage parents that want to have lunch with their kids, go have lunch with their kids. Get with other parents and have lunch with them so they don't feel so isolated. Like if we can't go to the lunchroom, then we bring the lunchroom to us. And it's more than just a lunch too. You have wonderful parents that will back the schools up. So just treat us with some respect and dignity. And if you really got to keep us out of school, have that data to back it up, and then try to do it as least restricted as possible, okay? And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Jenny Richard.
Hello. I wrote this down because I'm kind of nervous, so.
Okay.
Good evening. I'm Jenny Richard, and I have two children that have gone to Oldham County Schools. My son graduated in 2019, and my youngest is a senior this year at South. I began working for the district in 2013, and the last 3 years I've been at the central office in the finance department. I tell you this to say that I've been on both sides of the desk. My plea to you as board members is to listen to reason. To the public, don't believe everything you hear and read on social media. There are many untruths being spread, and I ask that you educate yourself before coming to conclusions. Dr. Radford joined our district in the middle of a pandemic in July of 2021. Surely you haven't forgotten that since then, we have all had to create a new normal. Dr. Radford was willing to take on challenges that were presented to him, cleaning up, rearranging, and coming up with new ideas. Ideas that would be impossible for some anytime, but especially with the times that we were dealing with. It has not been an easy process, but he made decisions and continues to do the job that he was hired to do in an honest and fair manner. Doing so often makes him the bad guy, and he will not be popular with everyone. I am fortunate enough to work in the same building as him, and although he is very busy, he often makes rounds to say hello to each of us. He continues to stay positive and often asks for feedback from staff and works to implement our ideas. He has hired a strong team that looks to better ways to teach our children and give them tools for a more positive future. They are working hard to come up with solutions to keep our teachers and staff happy. I can't go out without mentioning that as a finance department employee, I worked closely with the person that has made strong allegations against Dr. Radford. I won't share all of my thoughts on this, as the truth will come out, and that is for the courts to decide. One thing I will tell you is that I am a woman that is well into my 40s. Most of my coworkers are female, and all but a few are over 40 as well. I'm speaking for myself, my team, and surely most of my fellow female employees, that we have never felt discriminated against by Dr. Radford or anyone else. We have only been asked to do the jobs that were assigned to us and are within our job description. Thank you for listening, and as a reminder that you have questions about, or if you have a question about the process, please ask the appropriate people. Not all people share information with good intentions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Anderson?
Good evening. Yes, my name is Blaine Anderson. Is this on? You can hear me. I'm a LaGrange resident, and I have a granddaughter that attends Locust Grove. First off, I'm going to just start off by apologizing for my casual attire. I did come here straight from dropping off about 100 kids from Locust Grove and East Middle. Yes, this is more appropriate attire when you're driving a school bus in 100-plus degree heat like we did last week. I'm here really, and I'll make this very brief. I want to publicly say thank you to the board. And specifically to those of you that I've spoken to personally. I know I've had conversations with Joe. Larry and I have had a few different conversations, especially regarding the SEEK formula. So it's great to be able to reach out to the board members and to have these conversations. In addition, I'd like to say thank you to Dr. Radford. We chatted last week and set up a meeting, and we're able to sit down and review the budget and look at both the revenue and expenses, so that it really helps me to gain a better understanding of what you folks are dealing with. And from that perspective, it helps me as I go back and have conversations with some of our local legislators, of which I know one is in the room here this evening. And I mention that because when I'm not driving the bus, I am also the chairman of the Oldham County Republican Party. So that does give me a little bit of access to some of our legislators on your behalf. And the last thing I just want to say is thank you for the $750 or $1,500 stipend that you passed on behalf of the employees, whether you're part-time or full-time. As a board, I don't think you hear that enough. So I'm just going to close by saying thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Jennifer Sayamaya, sorry, I'm sure I'm not pronouncing that correctly. Oh, Sayamala. Oh, I always forget that it's an SH. One of these times I'm going to get it right, Jennifer, sorry.
Okay, so I received this letter from our high school a few days ago saying that my child's 504, let me put this down a little bit, would no longer have an annual meeting, but will instead hold a meeting once every 3 years. A 504 plan provides accommodations to children with disabilities. This is yet another example of cutting services to students with disabilities. It reads, our 504 coordinators have found that some plans change very little during the 3-year period before meetings. Well, there's something I know about having a child with a disability, is that their needs just stay the same year after year, especially over a long 3-year span. Yes, I'm being sarcastic. Let's be honest here and not lie to parents. The schools are not finding that we need to do less. Oldham County schools are not able to meet our kids' needs and are cutting wherever they can. Special needs kids are the kids who have more and more and more taken away. They are the most in need and harmed the most. One thing I've learned from moving here from another state is that the school system seems to celebrate athletes and neurotypical kids while neglecting children with disabilities. Furthermore, if a teacher speaks out about it, they're quickly shut down by leadership. I do see that the letter states that parents can still request an annual 504 meeting if they want to, and that's great. However, there are less proactive parents than myself who will probably not feel comfortable pushing for that meeting. Excuse me. The letter states that 504 coordinators will monitor student progress. They're responsible for monitoring and implementing a district's compliance with state and federal laws prohibiting disability discrimination. In my own personal experience, I've seen very little monitoring or accountability. If there were, I wouldn't have had to start an IEP group for parents or an accountability group. I asked my coordinator / vice principal, because the vice principal handles this, 2 years ago, how do we ensure accountability that the 504 is being followed? The answer I was given, well, just email me if you have any problems. I asked, well, how do we know that the 504 has been reviewed prior to classes starting? The answer given is, well, it's in a file that the teachers can access anytime they want to. It's just in the computer, they can just pop in and look at it. That's when I first thought, something's not right here. Just this year at the new school, I was assured that new teachers would be well informed of what's in the 504. Already I can tell you that there's been an issue just a few weeks into school. Coordinators might promise you that they're going to personally take care of an issue, and guess what? Nothing happens. Maybe the school district should take a survey of 504 and IEP parents and expose the many issues so that parents don't have to either sue or leave the district. We don't want to keep begging to have our kids receive what they are due under the law. For now, I plan to file this ridiculous letter away and keep talking about these issues with every parent I meet and connecting them with the many advocates I've become friends with who will demand that their child's rights are respected. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Senator Lindsay Tishner is our final speaker.
So many people are talking about funding, and we all have available on our website, the legislature.ky.gov, so much data about SEEK, about funding, just data profiles across the state of every district. So I've brought some of that information for you guys. So this one was put together when one of the SEEK personnel in the Office of Educational Accountability was getting ready to retire. Thankfully, she's come back. But when she was getting ready to retire, she had such knowledge of the SEEK program, the director said, can you please put that in a book for us so that we don't lose that knowledge? So that's what this is. And the second one is a study in 2021 that was put together. And I'll just read you really quickly what this purpose of this study was. And I think it might be able to help shed some light on funding issues and possible ways that we could change. There were, I think, 20 recommendations. It might have been a little less than that after they went through their study. But it said in November 2020, the Education Assessment and Accountability Review Subcommittee requested a study on the funding formula, including how SEEK and SEEK transportation funding are distributed, issues of equitable funding, differences between rural and non-rural areas, and how other states distribute education funding. So that's what this is. This was a deep dive, and their full report, it's boring to read, I'm sorry, but it's got so much good data in it, and I think it will be helpful for us to have a good understanding of where Oldham County's coming up short, why we're coming up short, and if there are ways to tweak it, fix it, if it's possible, if it's not, and why. So those two are for you. I have this one for you, Carly, because at the tax meeting you were asking about data. And these are all available on the website. I just got these printed copies. I think I like paper myself. But this is all the data of every county. You can compare all the demographics. It has the tax breakdown, the SEEK allocations, all of our test scores, ACT scores. It's a lot of fun, to be quite honest. I just go back and forth and look at different counties, and you can compare, and it has the full state data in the very back as well. So that's for you guys. And for anybody who's watching, I would encourage you to go to the website and find this stuff. I'll put a link up on my Facebook page, and then you guys can just dig around. There's so much information that the Office of Educational Accountability has put together, and it's totally accessible to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay.
It's awesome. Thank you so much. Great. Yeah, thank you.
I did make a good one for you.
It's fun.
You're too busy.
I've seen it.
Can I say something real quick?
Yes, sir.
Lindsay and I have been talking for quite a while about the SEEK formula. And she's in a rare position of what she can do about SEEK because she's got our district, which is a SEEK loser, plus she's got Trimble County, which is not. So she's got to walk a fine line. And when she talked about transportation and stuff like that, that may be alternatives that we can use. And I just appreciate what she's doing to try to find that funding for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to share a couple of things. First, about in terms of our students and our students who are most vulnerable. As you heard Mr. Gravis share an update about personnel, you can see that our students with disabilities is something that we continue to see staffing concerns and issues. We're going to have to really look hard at how we can continue to fill those positions. I have concerns about some of our most vulnerable students because we are here. The only reason we're on this stage is to support every student. I can very much appreciate and respect 100% the passion that was shared tonight about advocating just for that, for your son or your daughter or that of a student in our school system. Very much appreciate, respect that. Something we take very seriously, the achievement of every student, and that they are served, that they're known, that they're valued, that they're supported, and that they're loved. In terms of advocating, I appreciate Senator Tishner in sharing these reports and these studies. We will continue to advocate on behalf of Oldham County with our state representatives and state senators to increase funding for public education. They have a tough task, but our job as a school district and my job that in working with our Board of Education and our district is to advocate just for that, for increased funding, because we certainly need that. As you've heard, as our board has heard Dr. Shelton report, going back to 2008, funding levels at the state level and at the local level were about 50-50. Currently, as of 2022, that has shifted to 60-40. So 60% of our revenues are relying on local tax dollars. So we're getting less monies from the state, which is something that we need to continue to advocate for. Fully funding transportation happens to be one of those. You cannot compare one district to another district because of demographics, because of size, because of the SEEK formula itself, as our board has heard. I also want to really just point out the fact that many of our school leaders, school staff, and district staff are here tonight, and certainly our Board of Education knows this. Everyone is working so hard to support student learning and welcome our students every day and work hard to get them home every day. The efforts, the passion in which they do that, the energy in which they do so is nothing short of just awesome. They put their heart and soul into what they do. I witness them working as artists, being willing to put their initials at the end of the day on their work, and that is something that we should all be very proud of. I could not be more proud to be the superintendent of Oldham County Schools and working with the fine people that are in this room that lead our schools and that work with our students every day, because it takes all of us. The last comment I want to make, and it goes for me as well, is that everyone who is in front of a microphone, who is in front of a keyboard, or who is in Kroger, who is at the gas station, who is at Walmart, everyone is a recruiter and everyone is a retainer. So the message that we share, the message that we convey, the positive energy that we convey to others has a ripple effect from this stage across our county and across our school district. We want the very best. The people that are here in this room all want the same thing, want the very best for our students and want it delivered absolutely the very best. I can assure you that no one takes that responsibility more greater than myself. Although it is not about me, the board has hired me to do a job, and that is to help lead our district forward, and we're going to continue to do that. I appreciate the board, and I appreciate everyone being here tonight, so thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Radford. I would also like to add, I think our district is extremely lucky to have the 3 finalists for superintendent for our district are currently employed in our district, and I don't know that that would be the case in any other district in the state of Kentucky. We've got Dr. Radford, we've got Charla Six, and we've got Brent Deves, who all 3 were finalists for superintendent for our district. I probably have way more access to all of our people, more than most people would. There are many, many nights that this man and I have conversations at 10 p.m. at night because he's just leaving the office that evening, and that's when he's available to talk to me. Charla and I text at 11:30 at night on a regular basis. Jane and I do. Our district is extremely lucky and fortunate to have the people that we have working in our district. And that's all the way from Dr. Radford to the custodians that work in our buildings and everybody in between. And I am so proud of the hard work that all of you put in on a daily basis, 24/7 in our district for the kids that come through our doors every day. I appreciate you all. I will say 99.9% of the residents in this county appreciate you all, and I wish more of them would come and speak at our meetings so that you all could hear thank you more than you do. I appreciate you, everyone on this stage appreciates you, and the people that live in this county whose kids go to our schools appreciate you all. So thank you for the hard work that you all put in, and thank you, Dr. Radford, for punching in every day and going to bat for our kids and for our employees like you do every day. I appreciate you, and I appreciate all of you in this room that work for our district, including you, Mr. Anderson, for driving our bus. So thank you. Sorry. Next up, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair. So action items. First up is consider approval of tax rate for FY24 as presented.
Okay, and the recommended motion is to keep the current tax rate as it is, which is 81.2 cents per $100 assessed value for real and tangible personal property. General fund is 58.4, building fund 22.8. Motor vehicle tax rate is 64.3 cents per $100 of assessed value, and utility tax rate is 3%. That's the current recommendation. That is currently what we have. It is not an increase, just to be clear. Any board members, any questions on this? Can I get a motion to approve? Made by Mr. Dodson, seconded by Mr. Dennis. All those in favor of? And that's 5-0. Next, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Next, we have consider approval of FY24 board meeting SBDM dates as presented.
Okay, those are in the packet. Board members, do you all have any questions about these dates? Considering I was the one that asked that we change these, I appreciate that, so that they're spread out more throughout the week instead of on the same days every week. Can I have a motion to approve the SBDM dates as presented in the packet? Made by Mrs. Sheffer, seconded by Mrs. Clem. All those in favor, and that's 5-0. Next, sir.
Yes, consider approval of revised BG1 and change order number 1 for OCHS roof and foundation repairs bid package 3 project as shared with you previously in superintendent report.
Okay, and Mr. Bohannon came and talked to us about that earlier, and we've got the enclosure and the reasoning behind it. Board members, do you have any other questions? Can I get a motion to approve this? Made by Mrs. Clem, seconded by Mr. Dodson. All those in favor? And that's 5-0. Finally, sir?
Yes, information items presented for the district energy usage monthly report is there for board review.
And just take those under advisement.
Yes, ma'am.
And your next item, sir?
Yeah, recommend that we adjourn.
Can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting? Made by Mrs. Sheffer, seconded by Mrs. Clem. All those in favor? And that's 5-0. Thank you.